Thank you, sir. Thanks so much.
No les hacemos daño a nada.
Is the way that we fight, by knowing each other, by name.
Sabemos lo que es estar afuera de un condijo parados. Por eso nos llamamos los jornaleros.
Y ánimo, saludos a toda la raza latina inmigrante.
¿Qué le digo a la migra cuando la miro pasar? Le digo, chinga tu madre y déjame trabajar. ¿Qué le digo a la migra cuando la miro pasar? Le digo, chinga tu madre y déjame trabajar. Esa migra desgraciada que se vaya a la chingada, que se vaya a la chingada. Esa migra desgraciada. ¿Qué le digo a la migra cuando la miro pasar? Le digo, chinga tu madre y déjame trabajar. ¿Qué le digo a la migra cuando la miro pasar? Le digo, chinga tu madre y déjame trabajar. Esa migra desgraciada que se vaya a la chingada, que
Welcome, welcome, welcome. I love the energy in the chat. Um, my name is Gracie. I use she, her pronouns, and I am one of the campaigns directors here. My roles focuses specifically on C3 campaigns. So everything nonpartisan education. And this is a kind reminder that this is a C3 space. So we will not be aligning ourselves with any specific political parties. The space here is going to be super neutral. Um, Still going to be informative. And I want to say welcome, welcome. See, I see somebody, we always get this question, what is 501c3? It's just the legal designation that we use here to do this specific kind of work, to put it plainly. Indivisible is a multi-entity organization. So whenever you see these amazing work that are like really pointed and really specific and really partisan work, they're most likely done by the C3 side. And then this program is specifically ran through the C3 because it's nonpartisan educational. And thank you, thank you, thank you for being here. As I mentioned, this is one of the series. We can go to the next slide, Laura. So one of the series of the Advancing Our Values campaign is the Solidarity in Action speaker series here. A lot of y'all have attended many of the sessions. We are towards the tail end of the sessions for the year. And if you've been to one of our trainings before this year, let us know. Like, just let us know which one was your favorite, just where you calling from, which training was your favorite. But just a reminder of what these trainings are about and what they're aiming to do. So this, as we're preparing for a big fight next year for like the big election, and as we are currently fighting authoritarianism, it is really important, it is really imperative that we are training our people to show up in a way that is not just showing up, so showing up effectively, showing up in solidarity. And the key point is that we are showing up without causing further harm to to our communities that we seek to serve. This training specific is going to focus in on work and immigration rights. So that's the issue that we'll be zeroing in on. And on a personal note, I always like to let people know that whenever I really love to see people coming in to do this work for marginalized folks. But whenever we talk about immigrants, I like to remind people that I too, I am an immigrant. And whenever we talk about undocumented folks, to you, they may be your neighbors, they may be a distant person that you know. To me, they're my sisters, they're my cousins, I can name 50 undocumented folk to you right now. So this is not indirect to me. This is something that is really personal to me. But the overall goal of the program so far has been to build and strengthen the indivisible groups and the progressive movement all together. So we're giving y'all all the tools that you need so you can fight authoritarianism effectively. And we really want to make sure in these trainings that we are cultivating new champions to lead and speak out against authoritarianism. If you don't do anything else, we want you to show up and speak against it, whether it is with your friends, whether it is with your family, whether it is on the larger stage, as Laura is going to help you out in a little bit. And it made perfect sense to have Solidarity Pledge coming in to talk about solidarity. And Laura has an amazing training, and I'm actually going to pass it to her, who's going to tell you more about what she'll be talking to you about.
Gracie, thank you so much for that wonderful introduction and that grounding in what we're embarking on. I'm so excited to be here in partnership with you, Gracie, Indivisible, all of the Indivisible folks in the audience, here as one of the organizers with the Solidarity Organizing Initiative. My name is Laura. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm here today for the fight of our lives and as the proud daughter of Mexican immigrants and a social justice advocate for over 20 years. Often I get asked, like, why do you do this? And honestly, it's the same reason so many of you are here, because I believe in the dignity of every human life, because I believe that true democracy depends on us, all of us, showing up for one another however we can, whenever we can. So in community with Indivisible, my organization, the Solidarity Organizing Initiative, is building on and expanding our capacity and passion for civic participation and community power, so that together we can stand up for our neighbors, our values, and our democracy. And this work of showing up has never been more important. Every day we see the fundamental freedoms and basic humanity being ruthlessly violated. And if we stay silent, if we stay divided, that becomes our new reality. And so I'm so excited that over I mean, the number just keeps growing, y'all. This room just keeps getting bigger. We're at about 640 people strong. That's how many people are standing together now, right? This is a room of togetherness. This is a room of solidarity. And I hope that you take that in and savor that, because this room is a powerful room. And before we dig in, I want to step into some housekeepings and some asks of one another. Um, so I'm going to ask you to bring your full self. And that can mean a lot of things. But in this moment, I suggest that if it's possible, right? We all have different capacities, different things going on. Maybe you plan on just like treating it like a podcast, and that's fine. But I ask you to bring your full self in terms of turning off distractions, maybe having a pen and paper handy so that you can jot down some notes about what's resonating with you. What are you struggling through as we chew on this content together? Um, I also want to name that your ability to feel the full breadth of your humanity fuels our movement with the integrity that it deserves. Let your deep-rooted love of people call you to feel your feelings as they are. So maybe you are here because you feel despair. Maybe you feel impotent in the face of authoritarianism. Maybe you feel a little guilty. It's like, maybe I could be doing more. I'm not an immigrant. Maybe you don't feel anything at all, and that's kind of how you're protecting yourself. I want to welcome that. I want to honor that in this room. And I want you to note that whatever it is that you're feeling is going to be a source of your courage and connection. The depth of what we feel and our ability to feel it is what we can take and fuel our activism. And this is really important. I want to be really transparent with you. Most of our audience is white, non-immigrant. And I want to name that, right? I want to name that, and I want us to hold that in, to not be afraid of how you feel. This training may make you feel uncomfortable. Some of the content that we're going to cover today, it's not so that you can feel good. And the fact that you feel uncomfortable means that you're growing. So I want to name that at the top. I want you to lean into a feeling of discomfort. And that is what I mean by bringing your full self. And it's an invitation as we're in this space together. I also invite you to be operating from a space of gratitude. I am so grateful that Gracie invited us to be part of this amazing, amazing effort by Indivisible, creating these massive spaces of community. It's not an easy feat. Zoom makes it look easy, but I'm so grateful for Gracie and her grace, not to just play on her name. I am so grateful for what is now the 666 of you in this room that have decided on a Saturday that you're willing to plug in and see, what can I do differently? What can I learn? What can I contribute? I am in a space of gratitude. And it's also a practice. Despair takes root when we're unable to make space for the good in our lives. We're in a virtual space where so many people have chosen to be here, and I'm so grateful for each of you choosing to be here today. I want to offer grace to one another. One of the things about living under an authoritarian regime, because make no question about it, that is what's happening. We are more stressed. We are more paranoid. We are more worried. By being in the practice of offering grace to each other and ourselves, we're more nimble and willing to accept the fact that things will not be perfect. Offering each other grace helps build trust in one another and strengthens our movement. If you're operating in the assumption that the other person is trying their best, then it's not a big deal that the chat's going too fast, or that someone showed up a little late, or that things started a little early, right? Because you're willing to be flexible and you know that everyone is trying their best. And finally, there is such a wealth of knowledge in this space. You all are experts of your own lives. Gracie and I bring some expertise, some experience because of the things that we've chosen to do. But we are the same, all of us. And so take what's useful to you and leave what's not. Maybe the chat's moving too fast and tech savviness isn't your jam. That's okay. We're going to have a follow-up email with some stuff. It'll help you catch up. Maybe you're really into the chat. Maybe you're neurospicy. I identify as neurospicy. We welcome that. If it's not helpful to you, that's okay. You could leave it. We're going to cover a lot of content in this, what remains of our 2 hours together. So look for what's useful for you. I also challenge you, especially those of you that are experts and so experienced in organizing. I ask you to look at this material and think, how is it that I'm taking this material back to my community? How is it that I'm using this material to build solidarity? So these are the offerings that I have in terms of continuing to set the tone for our time together. And I appreciate you engaging and leaning into it. So our agenda for today is an ambitious one. And our session is going to culminate in a commitment to building solidarity through action. So that means that you, in community with others, will commit to doing an action of solidarity next week, the week before Thanksgiving, and right up to Thanksgiving. We're going to give you some ideas at the end of this training. We're going to ask you to put it on Mobilize. I'm just giving you a little preview of what we're going to do. But the purpose of all the concepts that we're going to be covering is so that you feel ready, empowered, and thrilled and excited to go ahead and do an action in your community right up to Thanksgiving. And so today we're going to cover getting grounded together, which we've already started. Gracie kicked us off. We're going to talk about the authoritarian playbook. We're going to review the 5 R's of resistance. We have our own playbook, y'all. We have our own playbook. We're going to talk about building solidarity. We're going to talk about what does solidarity mean and what does it look like. And again, we're going to make a commitment to what action we're going to take. Because this is a dance. We need to be willing to be in spaces to learn, to chew on things, to build community, and then we need to go out and do things that amplify our message. This sound good to folks? Excellent. Love to see it, love to hear it. So we're going to move on to talking about what's the moment that we're in? What is happening? How do you describe what is happening? As we live through this authoritarian takeover, it's so important to name what is happening. It makes a container. It makes the problem possible to move through. So for your friends that are not as connected to what is happening, or folks you know that have to disconnect to survive this moment, how do you tell them what is happening to immigrants, poor people, trans people, to our institutions and so on? I want to take a moment and think about how you describe what is happening to those folks. How do you describe, and I love seeing it in the chat, criminality, rampant hatred, lawless atrocities, brutal white racists are in power, uncertainty and fear, a policy revolution and a dismantling of our establishment, inhumanity, total cruelty. Lives are being torn apart, right? So we're talking about describing the denial of our human rights. Our neighbors are being scapegoated so that these folks can enrich themselves. So we know what's happening. You don't need to know the textbook word of authoritarianism to describe it. But I want to name for you that it is helpful to describe it to people and how you are bearing witness to it. Because if we are, the more in agreement that all of us are in acknowledging the reality of authoritarianism, the more activated people will be. So we're looking at some footage. This was maybe a couple weeks, it feels like many weeks ago now, but it was just this month, right? It was a huge mobilization. People were hitting the streets, and I think the estimates were about 7 million people. That is a lot of people. that are saying, we don't agree. And this particular image is from San Francisco, capturing that over 100,000 people took to the streets. And earlier this month, people voted against the regime in their local elections. And this image is from Portland, where we see a protester engaged in tactical frivolity. So we want to give some language to what we're seeing. Yes, we're living through an authoritarian takeover, but we're also living through the unprecedented mobilizing and organizing that is happening, where millions and millions of people are saying no. And they're saying no with their full selves, engaging in tactical frivolity, which is a nonviolent protest strategy that uses humor, playfulness, creativity, and absurdity as tools of nonviolent resistance. The idea, the purpose, the reason we chuckle is because we're disrupting the power and authority, not through confrontation or aggression, but through laughter, joy, imagination, and making repression look ridiculous and exposing the fragility of those in power. It is an act of solidarity to show up at a protest with a commitment to nonviolence. It is an act of solidarity to show up and show out with a commitment to nonviolence because we recognize that it is a strategy that keeps more of us safe and helps us win. I want to savor that because that's the truth. What we're seeing is people like you and me and everyone in this room. Don't forget that you're in a room of almost 700 people. Feel that. We come together in resistance to authoritarianism because we know that organizing and nonviolence and solidarity are how we win. But it's so important to carry distinctions about what is it that we're doing and why we're doing it and what our strategy is. So a quick note or a slow note, we're here together in community. It's important to know the difference between mobilizing and organizing. And this goes back to what responsibility we have and what opportunity we have to show up in solidarity. So first, I'll share with you that mobilizing is turning out people for short-term actions or events, often around immediate issue or goal without necessarily building lasting power. Organizing, building long-term power by developing leaders, relationships, and structures that can act collectively around shared interests. As we sit with these definitions, I want to know, what do you think? Why is it essential to both mobilize and organize? Why are both essential to our movement? Think through, what if we just mobilize? What might be the outcome of that? What if we just organize? What would be the outcome of that? It's short-term and long-term goals. Every individual has needs that they consider. Maybe some of us can only contribute to mobilizing. Maybe some of us are just skilled to organizing. But as a movement, we need each thing. Yeah, Alice, you said it. They feed each other. It's mobilizing helps us catch courage. It helps us stay fuel to keep going. Organizing builds the structure so that you show up to things like this so that you're ready to take action. Organizing builds the capacity. Mobilizing uses that capacity. Without organizing, mobilizing burns out. Without mobilizing, organizing stagnates. So it's so important that we recognize the value of each. Of course, there's constructive criticism of any structure, especially among the left. But I ask you to think and look for the path and embody the value of giving each other grace. We need both mobilizing and organizing in full strength of our collective capacity. This is the path to winning. So I want to offer to you a definition of solidarity. You might have your own, and it may look different for each and every one of us. But I hope that we all agree that solidarity is not just an idea, it's an action, it's a practice. Solidarity is a powerful word that effectively captures many aspects of what we're trying to do and say at this moment. To be in solidarity is to act as if what happens to you happens to me. It's an expression of a shared stake and shared fates. And that is exactly what is true right now. The far right might try to convince you that punching down or left is the way to advance your own standing, but we know better. The same violence they enact on our immigrant neighbors will come for everyone else. The rights that they're blatantly disregarding of the most vulnerable people are the same rights that they're going to disregard for our senators, mayors, teachers, and nurses. We are all in this together, and we need to act like it. Solidarity is not just an idea, it's an action, and you have to be in solidarity to enact it. And that's exactly what we need. This is a moment for courageous action, and we must be in motion to challenge the unrelenting actions of the regime. So that was a long-winded offering of what solidarity is. I have a shorter version for you to take with you, to chew on, to reflect on. Gracie, can I trouble you to read the quote?
Of course, daughter. And this amazing quote reads, "If you have come to help me, you are wasting your time. But if you have come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together."
Thank you so much, Gracie. I want to know, does this resonate with folks? This idea that white supremacy oppresses us all, that is a poison of this country, that one must not just show up as an ally, but one must show up in solidarity because we recognize that the harm to our immigrant neighbors is a harm to us as a whole. I don't know about y'all, but I have chills. I have chills all over my body because it's true. And I know we all know it's true. But we need to carry that truth with us. So I hope this quote is something you keep in your back pocket and you carry it with you after our time together today. We're going to step into another concept that's really important to socialize amongst our people. And I know all folks that have come to a lot of Indivisible events may already be very familiar with it. So I want to check in with y'all. So the authoritarian playbook. I want to check in on saying, if you've heard of it, let's put it on a scale. Let's put a 1 if you haven't heard of the authoritarian playbook, and 5 if you're like, Laura, I could take over this section. Don't worry. I got you. Like if it's, all right, okay. Woo! I love the chat so much right now. Look at this. I'm seeing 5s, 1s, 3s, 4s. Okay. 3s, 3s, 2s. Okay, fantastic. I love it. So we're in a room that is of the full spectrum. I am seeing a lot of 5s and I'm seeing a lot of 1s. And so in terms of practicing solidarity, it's how do we bring everyone along and having a shared understanding of concepts. So I'm going to ask my 5s to give me some grace in the repetition of this. And I'm going to ask my 1s to welcome into this concept of the authoritarian playbook. And we're going to walk through it. Okay? And it's been a goal, yeah. So the authoritarian playbook is a framework that describes the common strategies leaders and fascist movements use to consolidate power, weaken democracy, and silence the opposition. It's not unique to one country. It's seen across the globe, and they pull from the same manual. So it's helpful to realize this, to know how we can anticipate the regime's moves and learn from so many others throughout history who have faced these conditions and resisted. So there are strategies we can use to collectively slow, prevent, resist, and defeat the violence of the authoritarian regime. But we're going to walk through 7 key strategies used by authoritarians and reflect on a couple as we go. As we go through each of these, I invite you to think about or write down an example that comes to mind. And then for 1 or 2, we're going to ask you to add your thoughts in the chat. So the authoritarian playbook, one thing they do across the globe is they silence dissent. How many of you have seen hands off Tish? Don't come after my girl. Do not. And that is what this regime is doing. So I'm going to show you what the authoritarian playbook is doing, but I'm also going to show you how we're fighting back. And we're all part of that. They dehumanize and detain, right? They frame the targeted groups as dangerous to justify detention and exclusion. But in Chicago, a judge ordered the release of hundreds of arrested in the immigration crackdown, and ICE has to report weekly. So there's a struggle, right? The authoritarian playbook is enacted, but we are resisting. Every level, every pillar of our society is pushing back on it. So as we go back, somebody put in the chat, we have friends everywhere. There are more of us than there are of them. And we're not going to forget that. Normalize the unthinkable. Normalize the unthinkable. Not on our watch. It is unacceptable. I don't know how often I have seen, because I do view it as my responsibility to bear witness to the atrocities that this government is imposing on our people. It is not normal to tear gas a toddler. And it's unacceptable. And I stand in solidarity with all of you in this room in condemning it. I take my despair, my sense of feeling distraught, and I hold it and I condemn it. And this is part of our individual resistance that we'll talk about more, how it builds into movement resistance as we're talking through the elements of the playbook. Another piece of the authoritarian playbook is to use scapegoats. You blame a group for economic, health, or social crisis to justify discrimination. There is almost 60,000 people who have been kidnapped and are being held in detention right now. 71.5% do not have any criminal record at all. And we can have a separate session talking about what actual criminality is. Gracie could tell you all about that. We can have another discussion. Please do put it in the evaluation form if that's something you want to discuss. But I think it's important to name that. Call out the lies. An authoritarian regime will always want to control information. And what they have is the ability to lie. Lie, lie, lie. The bigger the lie, deny the truth, create alternate facts. And it's costing us. It's costing us generations of knowledge. Scientists have come together. This is a dark era. What else they do? They undermine democracy. The ACLU did an article talking about it. The attacks on democracy are putting our Constitution at risk. But democracy is something that we need to embody. Democracy is us being together in this room and then committing to take an action because we are embodying democracy. It is our right to stand in the way and slow down a kidnapping. It is our right to be in community and join ICE watch groups. It is our right to name and condemn and shame and isolate these immoral criminal acts by these masked ICE agents. And finally, authoritarian regimes expand surveillance and policing. I want to talk a little bit more about the surveillance piece. We need to push back on the policing and surveillance. I'm not going to call the bill what they called it because that's not what it is. It's the big ugly bill. Okay? Let's be very centered on the fact that it's the big ugly bill. And it gave $170 billion to the Department of Homeland Security. That's a lot of money. I wonder how many schools you can build with that money. I wonder how many children you could feed with that money. I wonder how many vaccines we could make with that money. Part of that money is going to go to this company, this little tiny company called Palantir. It's a tech giant that profits and builds surveillance and policing infrastructure. They embody how corporate power, technology, and state violence intersect to harm immigrant, Black, brown, Muslim, and other marginalized communities and erode our democracy. We have an article to share with you if you're not familiar with Palantir. You know who else is taking a little slice of the $170 billion? Private prison corporations. So this is a continuation of the thread of anti-Blackness. This is a continuation of the one exception for slavery in our Constitution where you imprison people. The GEO Group and Core Civic are making so much money with each individual that is being kidnapped. So it is about holding our disgust, our disdain with what this regime is doing, and creating enough space in our spirit, in our mind, to understand who is benefiting from it and how do we attack them. And these are just thinking questions. These are reflection questions for us. And finally, the facial recognition software being built by LexisNexis. So the idea being, this is why when you see the video clips of ICE taking pictures of people that are resisting and slowing down, because they're using databases to identify who the folks are that are slowing them down. So this is information that I'm not coming to you with its solutions, but I'm giving you the contours of the things that we should be thinking about as collectives that are the builders of the world that we deserve. You are the organizers, you are the builders of the world that we deserve. And part of that requires the discipline of understanding the landscape of how we're being attacked and who is attacking us and how are they benefiting. The authoritarian regime, this playbook, the purpose of it is to keep you tired, unaware, and not strategic. Indivisible, Gracie and I, our roles with our organizations, Indivisible and the Solidarity Organizing Initiative, we are here to be a counterbalance to that. And your presence, your choosing to be here is what's giving strength to our movement because we're having a shared understanding of what the landscape is of how we fight and how we show out and how we show up and how we build campaigns that are strategic and how we mobilize, right? So it's important to spend time understanding the authoritarian playbook because we must study our enemy. It's part of the discipline. And we must take what we learn to empower ourselves. It's $51.6 billion for the border wall, $45 billion for ICE detention, $29.9 billion for ICE enforcement, $170.7 billion in total for immigration enforcement. So part of me, and I'll just be candid with you, makes me feel this information just makes me kind of want to shut down. I want to cry, I want to weep. And honestly, I try to schedule that for like 10 minutes, at least once a day. And then I put my chest out and I realize that I can bear this. I have the privilege of being the daughter of immigrants. I have the privilege of looking the way that I do. And I have the privilege of being in my home and talking to you. So instead of being in despair of this, I think that's a lot of money that we can be putting towards, oh, I don't know, reducing the cost of groceries. I don't know, building a transportation system like Europe or having universal basic income. We can figure it out. This is a lot of money. This is a lot of money. That tells me that's a lot of money. Why am I not holding my electeds accountable to making sure that money goes to the things that I want? It's okay to be in despair. Bring your full self, feel it a little bit, but then stand right back up. And what does solidarity look like? It looks like a strategic analysis and using our imagination to find what's possible. We can build really cool things together, and we must. So I know that was a lot to take in. And I want to remind us of what we also know that is true. People are rising up and fighting back in all corners of society to defend and protect the rights of democracy, dignity, and the future we know we deserve. Massive mobilizations, response networks are forming. At schools, hospitals, people are getting together to help parents walk their children to school. Folks are taking courageous actions every day. I just came from a rapid response training down in Brooklyn. Fearful community members are like, hey, I'm undocumented. What do I do? And I was like, I'm not sure, but we're going to figure it out together. Okay? And the number one thing you can do, and I can do in the face of all these things, is what we're doing now, is being in a dance of spending some time learning and thinking and reflecting, and then spending some time organizing and taking action. I want us to savor the fact that we're not alone, that we got each other. And so I want to ask you, where are you in your organizing journey? I want you to put a 1. Oh, we do have the poll. Fantastic. All right, so you should have a poll. And we just want to know, where are you in your organizing journey? I'm going to take maybe about 30 seconds. And I am going to go, I didn't realize I'm doing a little time check. I am going to go a little fast after this. So buckle in a little bit. But I'm so excited to see. So we're giving folks, why don't we wait till about like the poll is like 60 or 70% done, and then we'll close it. Does that sound like a good idea? Okay. And I want us to be in a collective awareness of like, if this is the first time you come to something, you're like, I kind of want to find out what to do. That's perfect. That's you meeting the moment. If you were a seasoned organizer and you have some constructive feedback for the session, there's an evaluation form. You're more than welcome to tell us what we could be doing better. There is space for all of us. Maybe you're somewhere in the middle. But I do want to tell you, as we wait for folks to finish filling out that poll, if you've ever organized a birthday party, if you ever had a dinner party, if you ever went to the movies with one other person, you're an organizer. You are ready to meet this moment. You are ready to meet this moment of organizing your community in solidarity, to do acts of solidarity that help us catch courage and stand up to this authoritarian regime. So let's see. Woo! I love it. Look at us. I love it. That's so beautiful. We're planning actions. We're meeting regularly. We're on our way to making plans. We're having conversations with folks to figure out how to get it started. And you came here to find out what to do. That's a beautiful thing. Thank you so much for sharing. And if you weren't able to fill out the poll, that's okay. And if this starts going a little too fast or too slow, we'll also have the recording to refer to. But thank you for letting us know, if you were able to, where you are on your organizing journey. Because from a solidarity organizing initiative perspective, we all need to step into being organizers of our community to defend our community members. But I want to walk you through the anecdote, some of the things about what can we do? What are we doing? For this section, we're going to review the 5 R's of resistance. Just as the authoritarians have their playbook, we, the people, those who have defeated them, also have a strategy. And we're going to walk through the 5 R's. And as I do so, please note any examples that come to mind, either those that you've done or those that you've seen, and add them to the chat or write them down for yourself as a reminder of how many of us are in this fight and delight in the fact that we will win. So the 5 R's of resistance are to reject, to resist, to be in resilience, build relationship, and to reimagine. So it's so important that we reject and refuse to internalize or legitimize the values of this regime. And that could be something as simple as being sure that we say undocumented families, undocumented workers, whereas the regime is saying illegal alien. We're not going back to that. There was a hard fight in the 90s to recognize the humanity of our people, and we're going to stick to it. So your stick-to-itiveness matters. How we talk about one another matters. There's 4.7 million mixed status families in this country. I am one of them. Gracie shared that she is one of them. There are, probability-wise, quite a few in this room. So when we say undocumented folks, it matters. We express dissent privately and publicly. Wearing a whistle is quite the signal, right? Carrying a whistle. You can express it. Obviously, this is going to be particular to your context in terms of risk, in terms of repercussion. You're the best decider of that. But at scale, the more of us that are able to express dissent privately and publicly, the better. And we need to question the narrative and the tactics of the regime. So it's not just about being so appalled at what we're seeing, but also stepping into an analysis of like, who is benefiting from the billionaires owning Fox News, MSNBC, New York Times, Washington Post? Why would they filter things this way? Right? So to ask those questions is so important. And I want you to list your own thing. What else could be an act of resistance, of rejecting? And it's important to resist. So you engage in nonviolent resistance. So things like protests, boycotts, strikes, civil disobedience. I don't know about y'all, but Starbucks is on strike. I think it started yesterday. I call it, and I'm going to say this as an individual, I call it genocide juice, but that's just me. That's not the official name, right? But I was part of a campaign in 2004 to unionize Starbucks. So best believe I have not bought Starbucks in a minute. But I invite y'all to not buy Starbucks because they're on strike. That would be crossing the picket line. But there's plenty of other campaigns happening, right? And I think we're going to talk about another one at the tail end of this as well, that we're going to ask you to join on to. But many folks have stopped buying from Amazon. Folks are divesting from Spotify because they're running ICE ads, right? So there is a lot of things that we could engage with to resist. And I think one of the most prominent examples is everybody quitting their, so many people quitting their Disney Plus so that Jimmy Kimmel could go back on the air. And we do a dissect of that in another session. And if you'd like to see that, please go ahead and put that in the evaluation form. But as we think about the concept of resisting, it's doable. We want to build spaces of concentration like rallies and sit-ins and dispersion and walkouts. The 7 million people that hit the streets, that is resistance. The ability to have spaces of concentration. We have Liberty Square outside of Federal Plaza in New York City, where all the kidnapping is happening in the courthouses. Folks have started taking turns holding the park as a liberty space where they have teach-ins. And these are the things that we create with our sense of imagination, and they're acts of resistance. Tap into joy. Use humor and satire to expose the absurdity and inspire others. I catch courage every time I see the meme of the lady with the polka dot dress facing the tank with the birds out. That is so inspiring. That lady was probably just leaving her job, right? What else is an act of resistance? So we need to make these lists ourselves. What is an act of resistance for you? Maybe you live in a rural area and Walmart's the only thing you can shop from. I'm not here to judge that. It's not about judging one another. It's about maybe an act of resistance is that you shopped a little less there. Maybe. Or maybe it's something else. You're going to be the best person to come up with what does your resistance look like, but it has to come from your sense of integrity and a sober analysis of what you are able to do and where you're able to lean into discomfort. And an act of resistance is also jamming out. So for those with sound sensitivities, I apologize if the music is a little erosive, but the point I want to center us on the point. So resistance in that particular video, if you were able to see, it is showing the 23 people that have died in the hands of this government in detention in the concentration camps. So that was a vigil, I believe Indivisible with along with a coalition of partners of Disappeared in America, I think is what that coalition is calling themselves, which includes Endalon, includes Indivisible and Solidarity Organizing Initiative. We're like, hey, let's put out some vigils and let's honor the folks that we have lost, the families that have lost at the hands of this regime, because this is real. But it's also true that we can have a vigil and we can also have music and be joyous. We can feel both things at once, and that is resistance, because we are denying this authoritarian regime its intention, its strategy of robbing us of our humanity. So resistance is nuanced. Resilience is also so important to grow and nurture your relationships. The impact of COVID-19 is still being measured and processed by our collectives. One impact is that we're out of the practice of being in community. It can feel kind of awkward. And I'll share that as an extrovert, I lost some of my ease in which I was able to connect with people. And now this work is reminding me how important it is to be in community with one another in all the ways possible. So we need you to grow and nurture your relationships. Check in with your folks. We also need to balance well-being and self-care. Self-care is a term that was popularized by the late, great bell hooks. And if you haven't read bell hooks, I highly recommend reading some bell hooks. It is delicious. And it feeds our movement to read bell hooks. Self-care is a radical act when you are Black, trans, a person of color, disabled, etc., because the context is that the oppression we're facing is systemic. Self-care is radical when it feeds your soul, when you are resting, not because you're overwhelmed and you're victimized, but you are resting to recharge with the intent to go back into community, reinvigorated with love and courage. So maybe it does look like, I don't know, going to a spa or whatever. I'm not here to judge it. I'm here to just name what the true significance is and what it should do for you. If you take a step back to rest, and then you come back recommitted, reinvigorated, less irritable, that is self-care. That is the self-care that our movement needs. You need to be adaptable and flexible. We need to stretch our comfort zone. As we go through this collective trauma of seeing our neighbors kidnapped, stolen from daycares, child drop-offs, and so many other places, we are well served to understand that this trauma impacts our ability to think critically, to tap into compassion, to approach things with a sense of curiosity and generosity. As people with privilege, it is our duty to stretch our comfort zone and ask ourselves, what can I sacrifice? What can I learn? I'm going to tell you how I'm stretching my comfort zone. I'm the proud daughter of immigrants, Mexican American immigrants. And I just came back from a training where there was a child that was being trained on how to defend their community from ICE. This little girl was no more than 7 years old. And I'm stretching my comfort zone because I recognize that in order to win and build the big tent that our movement needs, I need to be willing to work with people that might be anti-immigrant, but they're pro due process. I need to be willing to fight with people that are not necessarily politically aligned with me, but recognize that authoritarianism is undoing our Constitution. And that's enough of a agreement point to be in this fight against authoritarianism together. So we need to understand. So being adaptable, being resilient, for me, my definition personally and my activism right now means that I am willing to work with people that may have said that, hey, I voted for one orange person. And I need to approach it with curiosity. Tell me more about that. How do you feel about it now? Right? This is I'm just sharing my personal version of what is me being adaptable and flexible and how I'm stretching my comfort zone. It looks different for everybody, what your stretch looks like. And that's a decision that you need to make individually with a lot of self-reflection. So when you show up in the collective of our movement, you're showing up clear and with purpose. This is what resiliency means. It means also committing to taking action. Relationship building. I want you to think how important it is that we have a big tent. Building coalitions across sectors of society, including unions, universities, religious groups. We need to foster dialogue across groups. We need to be willing to talk to people that are different from us. And that might feel uncomfortable. This is what I'm talking about, leaning into discomfort. We can't keep doing the things that are easy. If it has been easy for you to go to the mass demonstrations, then I am here to challenge you and say, what are you going to do that's uncomfortable? We need to engage individuals within key institutions and have them declare that they will protect their employees from ICE. Have them declare that they are safe spaces. What else? It is our duty to build relationship with one another that helps feed our ability to be in the other R's, the resilience, the resistance. We have the power to save lives. It's by building relationships across difference, class, race, status that we are able to affirm the truth. We are stronger together. And we want and deserve a world where you can work, live, and be free to pursue your happiness. So our ask for the Solidarity Week will be to continue the work of the R of resistance. So how many of you are part of an Ice Watch group? I want you to put the word ice melter in the chat if you're part of an Ice Watch group. And then if you aren't, we're going to be sharing a link to a crowdsource spreadsheet so that you can join one. And we'll also put it in the follow-up email. So if you miss it in the speeding Rolodex that is the chat, that's okay. And I want you to look at this list and add your Ice Watch group if we don't have it listed. This is it's an imperfect spreadsheet. It's a crowdsourced spreadsheet, but we're creating this to make it easier for folks. And then finally, our last R. Oh, sorry. Actually, let me tee this up. Speaking of imperfection, let me tee up this next video. I want to share with you this video of an attempted kidnapping. And I want you to think about how we're seeing the R's that we talked about in this video. Are we good to do that? Excellent.
Immigration enforcement officers were met by protesting crowds in Rochester, New York. Local Reverend Myra Brown went live on Facebook asking people to come help keep agents away from these roofers.
We have 3 ICE officers here who are trying to take men who are just doing a roofing job, and they're trying to take them and waiting them out to detain them. going to show you the thugs. They're hiding. You can see one of them. They keep hiding, walking behind the bush there. I need people to come down to Westminster and help us create a human chain so that we can keep these gentlemen safe.
A Monroe County legislator, Rachel Barnhart, was also present and posted pictures and video from the scene on X. I'm on Westminster, where 2 roofers won't come down from the roof. ICE is waiting for them.
Putting on a roof, trying to make $1 and paying taxes on that $1. And ICE was here bothering them. So I came to bother ICE.
Eventually, the ICE agents can be seen walking to their vehicles. One of the vehicles can be seen driving away with flat tires.
I just want to let you know that it works. ICE is leaving. They're leaving. They are getting in their cars and they are leaving.
After the agents left, Pastor Myra Brown addressed the crowd.
These folks deserve the same opportunity that each of us get. And so it's important that we are here, we are Rochester strong, and we will not have ICE coming in trying to take over our station and divide our community.
In a statement, the Department of Homeland Security said, quote, on September 9th, 2025, arrested Jacinto Maencela Gualpa, an illegal alien from Ecuador. As ICE was making the arrest, 2 other illegal aliens fled up to a rooftop and refused to come down.
What R's of resistance are present there, my friends? Do we see the power? Do we see the power of building relationship? If you have relationships with your neighbors, like this reverend did, who said, hey, I need people to show up and show out. And they did. And they did. You need to be well rested to be able to show up at a last minute call, right? We see so much about the R's of resistance and being able to create this moment where 2 kidnappings were averted. This is the power of engaging in the 5 R's of resistance. And finally, the last R is that we need to reimagine what's possible. And I'm sure, and I'm going to echo what I see in the chat, grateful and inspired by how many of us are ICE melters. There are so many of us. And it is because we are demanding of ourselves to imagine an alternative. We reject this authoritarian reality, and we must also build alternative institutions and initiatives to address community needs and build self-sufficiency. During COVID, we saw the community fridges. At this time, we're finding rapid response groups, mutual aid groups, communities getting together to pool together to get children safely to school. We have to invest in strategic planning, training, and coalition building. This session is part of an alternative infrastructure to what is being offered to us by this government. We have to pause, reflect, strategize, and refine our approach. As we build more strength, they're going to change their tactics as well. And so, again, it goes back to being flexible. But we need to be reflective of what it is that we're learning and have a vision and imagination for the short term and the long term. We're not going back to the way things were. It wasn't a true democracy for all of us. But where we're going is somewhere better. What else does it take to reimagine what's possible? Those of you that are well-traveled, maybe you've seen the community housing of Copenhagen. And forgive my pronunciation, I might be wrong. But community housing, universal healthcare, that's real in lots of parts of the world. Why can't it be real here? It can. And it's on us to demand that we bring it to life. I want to transition us to another section of our reflection and learning. This is an image of MLK meeting with organizers to pitch the Montgomery bus boycott. And I want to make sure that as we look at this image, we affirm that Black history is American history. There is no American history without Black history. So first, we honor that. And I want to connect this moment that we're seeing, this moment in time, to the recurring invitation you hear from many, if not all of our organizations. Have a community gathering. It is small local gatherings amongst neighbors, friends, people with a shared interest in saying no to authoritarianism. It is in these spaces of togetherness where plans of action, big or small, are us meeting in the moment we are called to. It is in small meeting groups that you can decide how much of a risk you're willing to take. How much of a disruptor are you willing to be? How much of a community builder are you willing to be as a collective? So we're going to do a little true and false now. And if you have more to add, I'm sure there is so much knowledge in this room. So I'm more than happy to benefit from that experience in the chat or in our evaluation form. But we're just going to walk through some quick highlights of the civil rights movement. And these highlights are with the intention of empowering us. Just like the 5 R's of resistance are things that we need to be doing individually. And the more that we do it individually, we can do in mass. We learn from the civil rights era what we can be doing to overcome. Are we ready to play a little true or false? Right, Gracie, I appreciate the hype. Yes, okay. So, true or false? Rosa Parks single-handedly started the Montgomery bus boycott by randomly refusing to give up her seat on a segregated bus. Ooh. Ooh, I'm seeing some false, I'm seeing some true. I'm seeing some false, I'm seeing some true. Okay, love it. Love it. Ooh, I'm seeing some name dropping. Good, love to see it. I love it. Yeah. This is false. This is false. And how we talk about it matters. It was an idea sparked by the righteous, educated anger of a young Claudette Colvin. I saw somebody dropped it in the chat. During the era of Jim Crow, where the law was segregation, at the tender age of 15, she was seated in the back of a bus when there was an overflow of white people, and she was told to move. She refused. She was violently arrested and charged with the crime of assaulting officers. Civil rights leaders began organizing around her case. It was a young person, a very young person. 15 is that's a child. And it was her act of courage that was contagious. It was 7 months later, 18-year-old Marie Louise Smith was arrested for refusing to yield her seat to a white passenger. But neither arrest, however, mobilized Montgomery's Black community the way that Rosa Parks did later that year. So we're talking a span of months. Like this concept of catching courage is very present in this. So though Rosa Parks had not planned on getting arrested on December 1st, 1955, she is quoted as saying, "I decided I needed to know once and for all what rights I had as a human being. The only tired I was tired of giving in." So as an organizer, let me tell you, it matters that Rosa Parks was not the first to refuse to give up her seat, nor the first to be arrested. Skilled in grassroots organizing, she was aware of the potential consequences of her act of civil disobedience. In addition to being a seamstress, she was also a respected community activist. Not only was she a member of the NAACP, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, but she also served as the local chapter's secretary for many years. So secretary is a little bit of a misnomer because she was an investigator, a deep listener to the suffering and the experiences of Black people at the hands of violent racists. She had been working on the desegregation of the city's schools, and in the summer of 1955, she had participated in a workshop on community activism at the Highlander Folk School, now called the Highlander Research and Education Center, which was, by the way, also burnt down maybe in 2018 by white supremacists in Tennessee. And she, like Claudette, was in a moment much like this one, where efforts to inform, resist, and change were well over a years-long effort. So Rosa Parks attended sessions like this one. There were trainings like this that led to our collective thinking and understanding. Claudette Colvin was a youth activist that knew her rights. Claudette Colvin was mentored by Rosa Parks. That matters. It matters that Claudette was a youth activist. It matters that you are here at this virtual gathering. Indivisible and the Solidarity Organizing Initiative, and each of you are following in the footsteps of these movement leaders. And we're finding the path. Are we ready for the next one? True or false? The Montgomery bus boycott was perfectly planned and was only a one-day boycott. Ooh. False, false. Okay, this is false. We got it. We got it. That's false. I did see, so I'm gonna dance a little bit back, honoring the imperfectness of our time together. There was a comment in the chat that said Rosa Parks was picked because she was pretty and old and light-skinned. Now, I want to honor the complexity of history and the nuanceness of history. And we always flatten it whenever we are talking about historic moments, because that's all our brain can understand. But as someone who has spent time with this, I want to honor the fact that there's also momentum that is being built, and the movement is learning in its togetherness. So when Claudette Colvin is being arrested, it pisses people off. Who does it piss off, right? And then Mary Louise is arrested. More people get pissed off. Rosa Parks, it was not planned, but she was aware of what was probably going to happen, because we get to tipping points of what we will be able to tolerate as collectives. So it's an oversimplification either way. It's not just to say, I'm not saying Rosa Parks wasn't a better strategic placement. Sure. Was it intentional? Maybe. The history doesn't bear it out. There is no actual thing that says then they chose Rosa Parks. Based on my reading, and maybe there's more expert in the room, it's the movement is not, it's like a swarm of birds in the sky that are kind of like reading each other's movements. And we need to be in tune with that. This is why the 5 R's of resilience and the 5 R's of resistance are there for us, because the movement isn't perfect in its planning. It's about seizing the moment. The boycott against Disney, for example, it was a couple of organizers that kind of built a toolkit and it caught fire. So we have to be willing to try things, and we have to be willing to have an openness to things. I'm sorry, and I couldn't resist this little side quest of sharing what I am feeling, I am learning, and I'm being called to share with you in terms of how our movement is coalescing to meet this authoritarian reality. So just to step back into the true or false thing we're doing, that it was a one-day boycott. It was perfectly planned. And we're saying that this is false, right? The Montgomery bus boycott was perfectly planned and was a one-day boycott. This is false. What had happened was Joanne Robinson, a graduate of Columbia University, professor of Alabama State, and leader of the Women's Political Council, learned that Rosa Parks had been arrested. She took that fire. She went to her college, where she was a teacher, to print 52,000 flyers and distribute them with a small army of Black women to all the small businesses. And the plan was set, one-day boycott. It was a set plan. So it was one person. She was ready to throw down for a boycott after Claudette got arrested. Let's do it. But you need to have the right elements and togetherness and solidarity so that these things can happen. I want us to sit with that analysis, with that reality. I want us to think through how one act of courage can shift our entire trajectory as a country. And I want to show you the flyer that Joanne Robinson typed up on a typewriter. And Gracie, can I trouble you to read it?
Of course, Laura. So it reads, another Negro woman has been arrested and thrown in jail because she refused to get up out of her seat on the bus for a white person to sit down. It is the second time since the Claudette Colbert case that a Negro woman has been arrested for the same thing. This has to be stopped. Negroes have rights too, for if Negroes did not ride the buses, they could not operate. Three-fourths of the riders are Negroes. Yet we are arrested or have to stand over empty seats. If we do not do something to stop this arrest, they will continue. The next time, it may be you or your daughter or your mother. This woman's case will come up on Monday. We are therefore asking every Negro to stay off the buses Monday in protest of the arrest and trial. Don't ride the buses to work, to town, to school, or anywhere on Monday. You can afford to stay out of school for one day if you have no other way to go except by bus. You can also afford to stay out of town for one day. If you work, take a cab or walk. But please, children and grown-ups, don't ride the bus at all on Monday. Please stay off all buses Monday.
Thank you so much, Gracie. I think it's just so amazing to look at what was typed out at a typewriter and just deciding to go. And so I want to also highlight that it is the solidarity that carried the way. Joanne Robinson wasn't a random person that was just upset about what was happening and decided on her own. It was, I am a person of the community. I am embedded on the community, and I have my righteous anger to take action. And I'm going to try and try and try and see what happens, right? It is being part of solidarity spaces like this, spending time learning our history, spending time understanding why organizations and movements are strategizing a particular way, and then trying a million different experiments and see what sticks. We are mirroring this. We are learning from this in terms of what strategies are we going to decide on. And it's going to take people's individual courage to kind of set the fire. And then more things are going to emerge. The thing about this is that they're like, oh, this boycott was a huge success. And it established leaders, like the established leaders, folks, they're like, I don't know, boycotts are kind of hard. Perhaps they didn't want to lead in the moment. They're like, so maybe these relationships will be injured. And me as a leader, I don't want to do that. So a new member was chosen to lead the movement, this boycott, because they're going to keep the fire going. Can you guess who the leader was? Can you guess who the leader was at the age of 26 years old? I love seeing in the chat, who dat? Yeah, you guessed right. The hive mind knows. Because I'm okay. He was new to Montgomery, and they're like, how about this guy? And this guy's like, sure. Right? And that's probably an oversimplification. Clearly, right? You have to simplify history to understand it. But let's simplify it in a way that is honest, has integrity, and serves us in inspiring our movement. We can do that. It was so successful to have this that then they built the Montgomery Improvement Association. MLK was the leader of it. And then like, well, let's make a list of demands. It's as organizers meet to channel that momentum, it's expanded with this list of demands. Courteous treatment by bus operators, first come, first serve seating for all, with black seating from the rear and whites from the front. So we're still maintaining segregation in our ask. Black bus operators on predominantly Black routes. Right? There have been efforts years before of talking to city officials, of trying different ways to create more equity and dignity in the experience of riding the bus. But those had all failed. But now that this boycott was a success, there's an opportunity. Are we in formation to take it? It's important to remember that bus drivers, who were all white, were deputized in a brutal force of abuse. I'm not going to flatten how ugly it was. But the responsibility and the response of building on the momentum was met. And so when we think about how long this boycott was, true or false, the Montgomery bus boycott lasted 381 days. I love the people yelling at me at the chat. All caps. True! I don't take it as yelling. I take it as passion. Heated passion. As a Latina, it's just passion, the capital T. And you're right. It's true. Right? But I want you to think about one of the lecturers on this, or one of the books talked about how this was like the first Uber that was created to maintain this boycott. How much infrastructure, how much alternative structures do you need to make a boycott that long successful? How much sacrifice did people have to make sure the economic pain was at least a sliver of what the pain that was inflicted on the Black community? How much people power did it require? Thank you, Gracie. They walk so we can run. The boycott lasted 381 days, ending on December 20th, 1956. It cost the city and the bus company an estimated $3,000 per day in lost fares. Roughly $1 million in total losses over the course of the boycott. What would happen if, I don't know, everybody in Chicago stopped riding the train? Or what would happen if everybody in New York was like, actually, we're not going to ride the train today for one day. Let's see what happens. I don't know. I'm just putting out ideas. The idea being that the pain that we feel by this injustice, we need to figure out ways that the pain is felt by the people responsible. And that's the tech bros, the billionaires, the institutions that are capitulating. I take note from the Montgomery bus boycott on how to not cooperate. And the success of this boycott inspired similar protests across the South and became a foundational victory in the civil rights movement, proving the power of sustained collective nonviolent resistance. I want you to take away from this mini civil rights movement review, that we have faced dehumanization in this country before. And I want you to take pride in what we can accomplish while also carrying an awareness that the cost is different for each of us. Some of us are going to have to sacrifice a little bit more than others. Some of us have already sacrificed our lives. And I'm thinking of the 23 people that have already died in the hands of detention centers. I want to remind us that we can feel both things. We can carry the nuance. We can walk and chew gum at the same time. We're capable.
Well, this past.
So I'm going to transition us. And thank you so much for sticking with us for this. I know that we're being ambitious with taking this much of your time. And I just want to take a moment to say thank you for sticking through with us. And I hope it's a useful use of your time. And if not, please put it in the evaluation at the end. But I want to transition us to thinking about solidarity and what it looks like. So we're going to watch a video, and then I'm going to ask you, how is this an act of solidarity? So I want us to tee up.
Well, this past weekend, people bared it all to protest President Trump's plan to send the National Guard to Portland. They joined in an emergency naked bike ride in the rain. It's usually an annual event held in the summer, meant to be a protest against fossil fuels. But this one brought out hundreds of people who rode through downtown Portland and gathered at the ICE building. The event even got the attention of U.S. House Speaker Mike Johnson. In a news conference today about the ongoing government shutdown, he answered a question about federal officers reportedly getting rough with people they're arresting and whether Congress should implement more oversight.
To demand oversight on federal law enforcement? Well, I've not seen them cross the line yet, and that we have committees of jurisdiction who have that responsibility, but it's not risen to that level. What I've seen is the abuse of law enforcement by radical leftist activists. Most recently, the most threatening thing I've seen yet was the naked bicyclers in Portland who were protesting ICE down there. I mean, it's getting really ugly.
Okay, well, it seems like it was a bit of tongue-in-cheek response, no pun intended, given the smirks that you're about to see from the people standing behind him. Speaker Johnson went on to say the protesters are the ones targeting federal officers.
They have attacked, physically assaulted officers. People have been arrested, okay? This is serious business. And ICE and the valiant, brave, patriotic Americans who step up to serve in these dangerous law enforcement positions deserve our respect and our support.
Wow. Wow. So going back to the authoritarian playbook, we see the lies, right? The lies of the regime. But I think it's also important to think about, how is this an act of solidarity to be in a naked bike ride, right? What would the reaction be if this was mostly black people biking? Do you think this would have this reaction if it was mostly black people biking? Why is that? Yeah. So the question is always to bring to the forefront an awareness of how oppression shows up differently in this time. And I think it's also important to kind of be aware of, what are we willing to do? So how many of you would do a naked bike ride as a protest on a scale of 1 to 5? 1 meaning I've done it, I can tell you all about it. Here are some pointers. Another 5, 1 meaning never. I would never do a naked bike ride. Never, never, never. I love how the scale breaks with this question. Like, it's either like 0, absolutely not even considered. And then like some people are like, I would, it goes after the 10. Yeah. And isn't it interesting to think about too? It's interesting to think about that particular proposal. Would I do a naked bike ride? And I want to affirm for you that whatever your answer is, it's valid. It's a personal choice. And you also don't have to. What is the right risk and the right amount of stretch is up to each individual. So I want to talk a little bit about types of actions, right? The way that we show up to this movement, the way that we contribute to acts of solidarity can look very different for each of us. There's no one right way to contribute to the movement. But there are some contours that I hope you're picking up as in our time together about, am I feeling a little uncomfortable? Because that's stretching, that's building. Am I challenging myself? Am I willing to sacrifice something in proportion to my privilege? These are the kinds of questions that should guide your decision making. And then those decisions that help you understand what your boundaries and capabilities are when you show up in collective spaces, so that you are not telling the collective spaces what to do, but you are naming what your contribution is. This is what we're helping you think through. At least that's the intention. And if that's not what we accomplish in our time together, please do not hesitate to let us know via the evaluation form. But I want us to think about different types of actions. So there's different types of actions that are important for us to understand the definitions of, and it's important for us to think about how they interplay together. And so these are loose containers in terms of the type of actions that we can take. So we have symbolic actions, right? To raise public awareness of an issue and persuade a target to act in a desired way. So it's arguable. You can say perhaps the demonstrations in Chicago deterred in some way the National Guard deployment. It could be arguable. It's arguable that what happened in LA is LA won. I may or may not have talked to an LA activist who told me this, but I think it's important to name it. And you're not going to see a headline that says LA won, right? Building alternatives to build an alternative institution or policy by acting as though it is already in place to disrupt or directly challenge the current system, policy, and demonstrate alternatives. Mutual aid groups are throwing down. The threat to our SNAP benefits, people mobilize real quick. And non-cooperation, to undermine the authority of an unjust system by disrupting it, refusing to cooperate with it, or otherwise making it harder or impossible for the system to keep its unfair policy. So these are containers. They're not perfect. If you think about the naked bike ride, for example, is that a symbolic action or non-cooperation? And I'll tell you, for me, it's a little bit of both. For me, I would comfortably label it as both, because you are not cooperating with the status quo. You could have very easily gone to work or watched a Netflix special. I have a Juan Gabriel special that I've been meaning to watch. But instead, I'm going to use the I in the togetherness of, like, I chose to go on a naked bike ride instead. I am not cooperating with the regime. I am changing what I'm doing. I'm not going to do my regular day in and day out and normalization. Therefore, I'm not cooperating. You could also argue that it's symbolic. Hey, that didn't stop any kidnapping. That didn't do anything. That was just performative. We need performance, but we need all three. It's not enough to just have one or the other. We need an interplay in our movement of all three things. So when people are giving you the criticism, and it may be valid, like, this is performative, it's like, yes, it is, and it was a lot of fun. And it embodied my democratic right. It embodied democracy for me to say no to this. And it was fun for me. And it makes it easier for other people to join me in doing it. Because not everyone is going to be able to risk arrest in interrupting a kidnapping. Not everyone is going to be able to have the infrastructure, the documentation status to run towards the whistle when a kidnap is happening. Not everyone has the same ability, right? Our disabled folks contribute in a different way. So I think it's important that we name the value and understand deeply the value and interplay. Like we started at the beginning, mobilizing versus organizing. Both are really important. In our movement, symbolic actions, building alternatives, and engaging in non-cooperation need to be equally prioritized and important. But what it looks like for each of us as individuals may vary. Maybe non-cooperation is throwing a sandwich at an ICE agent and then going to court and then being acquitted. Maybe. Is it symbolic? I mean, could have been a felony on his record. Is it a good use of our time to argue about whether or not it's this one or that one? Probably not. What is most useful is the framing of yes and. Is yes, it's symbolic. And I'm also part of mutual aid. And I'm practicing non-cooperation. So these are the ideas we need to think about and socialize and bring back to our communities and use to inform what acts of solidarity we're going to do next week. So I want to transition to a very individualized activity. And if you have a pen and paper handy, it's going to be really helpful. And this is a little bit of a reflection exercise, and it can be challenging. And so I want you to think about, what is it within your control? So you're going to draw 3 circles, 1 circle, and that circle, that one in the middle, I want you to write down all the things that come to mind that are in your control. And we're going to slow down a little bit for this. Maybe you have to go get a paper. Maybe it takes a little bit to think about. Because we're drawing 3 circles, and in the one in the middle, I want you to put all the things that are in your control. What is actually within your immediate control? And that could look different for each of us. It's a good question in the chat. I know we've been talking about a lot of these other big concepts of like non-cooperation, resistance, but this is a very individual exercise of like, what can I actually control? I can control when I wake up. Not me, I have a toddler. So no, that's not in my control. Can I control? Okay, so to be transparent, this is a hard exercise for me. Um, what can I control? What would I put in my little sphere? I can control what I invest my time in. I chose to go do an in-person training on rapid response. I can control my feeling. Well, I can't control my feelings. I can control how my feelings show up. Right? So I started crying earlier and then I took it back. That doesn't mean I'm not going to cry a little bit later. I just try to schedule it. That's just me. We can control our reactions, right? But that might be different. Some of us may struggle with that, right? So there isn't a right answer for this. This is an exercise that I'm kind of walking you through. So let's say, I hope that some of you have like at least 3 or 4 things in your inner circle. And then I want you to draw a bigger circle around it. And that's going to be your sphere of influence. So I want you to put in that other circle your groups, your institutions, anything else that comes to mind. I want to put in my sphere of influence, like definitely my friends. They influence me. I think I started having like matcha tea because of them, or like they sent me a meme and then, right? And I influence them. Like that's my sphere of influence. I probably have my toddler probably has more influence over me than I do over her, but whatever, it's fine. I'm gonna say I have influence as a parent. I have an influence on as on my partner, what I choose to do. Right? So let's think about like we're just breaking it down like really simple elements in that outer sphere. Like because we did what is our sphere of control, right? And now we're filling in what is our sphere of influence. And this is a very individualized, you have influence over, maybe you're a person of faith, and you're really committed to your church. Maybe you have influence there. Maybe you're a member of your local politically focused group. I will not name names. We're a C3 space, and you have influence there. Yeah, and you guys can name whatever you want in the chat because you're participants. And so as we're building these circles, I hope you have a couple of things there. Your sphere of influence. And then I want you to put in the last circle, draw another circle. Right? Maybe sphere of influence is friends and family. Right? You might have more influence than you think. Your Indivisible team, look, snaps. Your collective group, your local mutual aid group, whatever groups you're a part of, right? So you have influence. And then finally, this outer circle, go ahead and put the things that concern you. This really big outer circle, right? Everything else that you care about but have no influence over and cannot change alone. Like I don't have influence over climate change, and that bums me out. But I worry about it. I don't have influence over, I don't have influence over where my mom lives, and how I shows up over there. Like I wouldn't have influence over like how to defend my family, where my families live in other parts of the country. I don't have influence over how much like the outer culture influences my family, right? So as we're filling these in, I think this tool is so that we are focused on and aware of what is it that you have control over, what is it that you have influence over, and what is the stuff that you care about but can't have any impact on. So we started talking about authoritarianism and the 7 tactics that they have. They obviously have more tactics than that, but that's just one way of understanding and creating containers for our understanding. This exercise is a counterbalance to that as well, because authoritarianism thrives on overwhelming us with the concern sphere. right? If you open up your phone, you're on social media, you read the news, you have a heartbeat, bam, 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 every story. This institution is falling. Department of Education gone. Trans people have to put their dead names on their passport. Da, da, da. Like I'm not going to list all the things that are traumatizing us. Those are just a few of the examples, right? But it's that sphere of concern that gets attacked by authoritarianism. And it makes you feel like you don't have agency. But this is a tool for you to be on purpose, for you to be intentional, for you to be centered on, I know that I can go to an Indivisible session and learn about what I can do. I know that I have the capacity to learn. I know that authoritarianism wants me to feel disempowered. So I'm going to step into my power because each and every one of us has power. And that sphere of influence tells us where that power is. We use this tool to stay grounded in our purpose, but also to challenge yourself and your circle or groups to expand it. So the idea is that you can also work on, like I talked about, like stretching and leaning into your discomfort. You could also grow your sphere of influence. This isn't a fixed exercise. What I walked you through, like it may feel like, oh, well, this is all I could come up with now. But this is ever changing. This is a living thing. What you have influence over, what you have control over, right? So the idea is that this is an individual tool. But it's also a movement tool. Think of yourself, your individual action, choosing to reject, resist, and reimagine. And now go through your group's work, your indivisible group, the collective action that we're building in relationship to shift narratives, to organize campaigns that feeds into collective movements that might feel too big. So your individual sense of purpose and clarity on what you can control, you working to stretch your circle of influence and being in sync with Indivisible or Solidarity Organizing Initiative or our movement to defeat authoritarianism allows us to take collective action. So the collective action of everybody, I forget how many, it costs like $1.7 million to Disney with all the cancellations of the subscription. That was an immediate collective action. It was in an alignment of purpose and integrity where thousands of people in Montgomery in 1955 said, I'm not riding the bus today. I saw this message. It resonated with me. I'm going to take that action. And collective action creates mass movements. So this is where we balance the individualism that is an ethos of this country with our collectivism that this movement needs from us. So you give yourself time to have clarity of purpose. So when you feel uncomfortable building relationship with someone that might be different from you, you can be centered in the fact that your purpose is to find justice together. It won't get rid of the discomfort, but it kind of lightens the load a little bit, doesn't it? Because you're clear on what your purpose is. So I hope that this exercise of writing in circles is something that you'll revisit as well, because it changes. If you feel unanchored, if you feel overwhelmed, this is an exercise that you can partake in so that you can show up refueled to our movement. So I hope that some takeaways for you are that focus will fuel you. Expanding your influence requires discomfort. And influence is power in motion. So our ability to reach out to our neighbors and say, I don't know you yet, but I'm excited to get to know you, is how we build power. So we're coming up to our ask. Any seasoned organizer knows that anytime you have a session, a gathering, there's people power in this room. And every time there's people power, You got to be specific with your people about what you're asking of them. And I'll share with you that we're listing quite a few things. And I want to walk you through this list, right? As we come to the home stretch of our time together. We are here to offer a list of actions that you can host from now till Thanksgiving. And I want you to know and savor the knowledge that we're in the sacred work of learning. That mass movements that are successful require the rigor of learning and preparing for action. We have already engaged in learning in this time together, and now we're asked to declare what action we were going to take. So here are the things that we're offering and asking you and challenging you to do. The first one is to hold a vigil in partnership with a faith or cultural institution in your neighborhood. And in our toolkit, we'll have the list of the 23 people that have been killed by being in detention camps that you can honor. If you are artistic or your collective has that creative energy, we challenge you to create an art installation or silhouette walks or do a banner drop to make the human cost of deportations visible. Another option is to do a blackout party or a gathering to bring awareness and create co-planning mutual aid session. Option D is to mobilize pantry or resource distribution. So you set up a delivery pop-up system where you hand out school supplies. A silhouette walk is when you draw out a silhouette, and you could either do that with cardboard or you can do it with chalk on the street, where you are honoring those that have been disappeared and kidnapped. You can pass out Know Your Rights cards, and the point is to do it in a group, right? Or do a teach-in, host a community education center session, and distribute multilingual legal rights info. You can set up a community ICE training. One of the things about the Know Your Rights trainings is that they are really designed so that you go and do a training yourself. You attend a training, you can watch a video, and then you host one. And that can be an example of really stretching into your discomfort. But the more of us that are ready and willing to lean into that discomfort to lead these things, the more powerful we are as a movement. And then we could also generate everyday aid for immigrant families. So we can provide groceries, transportation, childcare. And you can do that a variety of ways. You could say, I'm looking for a buddy that I want to connect with, that I want to build a mutual aid network with. Or you can do something else. So let's take a moment and think which one you want to do or you're inspired with. And so we're going to drop a form that is a declaration form, a commitment form, and it's also an evaluation. And then I'm going to go ahead and pass it to Gracie.
Okay. I've been monitoring the chat and I've been hearing a lot of words, a lot of questions about what do I do next? What do I do next? Can you go to the next slide, Laura?
Yes.
So we want y'all, you are ultimately you are the person who know your community the best, right? You know what your community needs. I do not know what the people in Rochester needs. I do not know I live in Florida. And even then, I do not know what the people in the whole state of Florida need. Maybe I can do some work in my local community. So what we're asking is that you think through a way that you want to show up in your community, in solidarity, and you take action towards it. The ideas Laura just shared are just ideas. But what we're asking is that when you think about that thing that you want to do, is that you register the event and let us know what ultimately you decided to do. Some of the things can include a vigil, like Laura said. You could do a resource drive for immigrants. You could partner with a local immigrant organization, just like part of this training is to ensure that you are building the big tent. You are consistently showing up to build relationships with people that you otherwise wouldn't have. And we're asking that you do it with care. That you find your local immigrant community organization, so people who are already doing the work, and you schedule a one-on-one with one of the organizers and figure out what exactly do they need. How can I show up for you? And whenever you identify that, you can use this link to register the event and let us know what you end up ultimately doing. And we're asking that you do it the weeks leading up to Thanksgiving, because it's just people are going to be in the spirit of giving is just fitting. So whatever it is that you decide to do, use the form to let us know. I hope this was really impactful for y'all, as it was for me. And I'm going to pass it back to Laura, who's going to